Hey, everybody, welcome to the Otherz podcast. I'm your host, Steve Penny. Rafa is away this week. He is off gallivanting around Europe somewhere. The last I saw of him, he may have been in Paris or he may have been somewhere else. So who knows where he is right now. But with him away, luckily, there is no need to just listen to me rattling on. Very special guest, friend of the podcast. I'm going to introduce him by both his names because we were discussing this beforehand. It is James, aka JDoug. You've probably heard us talk about him on the podcast previously. How you doing, man? You good?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's a little warmer here today, which is nice. We're getting a last burst of summer in London, but yeah, other than being warm, all good.
Nice. All right. So thank you for joining us this week in the absence of Rafa. I know we've been talking about it for many months.
It has been a while. It has been a while. But yeah, no, happy to be here, finally doing one, and for a song that I really like as well, which is an added bonus.
This was a surprise when, because I mentioned this to Rafa, I think, the other week about picking a new one because we always leave it till the last minute. And recently we've done a lot of like the sort of bigger hits and none of the, I'd say, slightly more obscure ones. So I thought, let's pick this one. It's a bit of a different one. And when Rafa couldn't make it, and I asked yourself, because we've been talking about doing this, I wasn't sure if this would be one that you were into or not. So it was a pleasant surprise when you replied back and you were like, yeah, man, I love this one.
Yeah, no, it's a big one, and yeah, just in general, all of the songs with these artists are kind of special ones. I think we'll get into it, but yeah, definitely happy to be doing this one.
Nice. So this week we have the 2008 Japanese banger from the Teriyaki Boyz, Zock On, featuring Pharrell and Busta Rhymes. So let's go for a few sort of basic facts and figures before we get into it. So the second single from their second album is Serious Japanese, released on the 19th of March 2008. Peaked at 16 on the Japanese single charts. I don't know if it got a formal release elsewhere. I assume there was a CD of it, wasn't there, and a vinyl with them on the cover.
Yeah,
I have the feeling that that got a US release. Someone can tell me that I'm wrong, but I imagine it probably didn't sell enough to actually even register on the charts in the US.
yeah. I think I've got a copy of the CD single. It's definitely a Japanese copy, but yeah, I haven't seen anything else floating around. So uh, kind of a question mark on that.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that and check. And this was recorded on, I assume, during one of Pharrell's many trips to Japan that he has undertaken over the years. I think around this period, he was spending quite a lot of time out there with Nigo and, doing various bits of work with the Teriyaki Boyz and also working on, BBC stuff and other ventures while he was over there. And the video itself is uploaded under actually Universal Music Japan's YouTube channel with a respectable 2.2 million views. There is an alternate version as well, which I'd completely forgotten about
Mm.
until I watched this, and then it popped up as like a recommended thing. But I had seen it before, so there is an alternate Nigo directed version, which has even fewer views. I think. I don't think they've ever really sort of promoted it or did anything with it, but that is also out there. So there'll be a link in the show notes to that one as well. So, if we get into this one, why are you such a fan of this one? What is it about this track?
I think right from the very first music that Pharrell, the Neptunes were doing with the Teriyaki Boys, with Nigo, I think I just really liked it straight away. So the stuff on the previous album, the Cho Large song, and I guess between that and Zock On coming out, also you had the Tokyo Drift song from the Tokyo Drift movie, and yeah, I just all of that stuff I really liked. I guess I've always been kind of into Japanese stuff. And just hearing those few songs, they always just had a different energy to the other stuff that Pharrell and the Neptunes were producing at that time. I just felt like it was like a perfect match somehow. Like it was just this really weird thing that I've never really been able to put my finger on, but I really heavily associate the Neptunes with Japan. And it's not just because of how much time Pharrell spent out there and like the kind of the fashion crossover. It's just like the sound of some of the songs, like even going back even further, there's just like it just fits perfectly with Japan somehow. It's just like a real like synergy between the two. So yeah, everything that he was putting out with the Teriyaki Boys and Nigo, I was super into that. And then this album started to kind of heat up, and Zock On came out, and yeah, I was just like, this is this is amazing. This is a great song, and I think especially the when you get Pharrell doing the hook in Japanese, it was just kind of, I don't know, it was just such a cool hook. I mean, it was just like the epitome of cool to me at that time. So yeah, like a big one for sure.
It's one of those tracks that, even though it had that kind of limited release, I get the feeling that had it not been partially in Japanese, it probably would have traveled quite well, in terms of the sound of it. So had it got like a proper US release and proper like marketing behind it and
Mm,
stuff like that. Because I would say, this is 2008. This is maybe around kind of peak Nego Bape kind of stuff,
mm,
that kind of era of him sort of being with Pharrell a lot of the time, and kind of Pharrell's work with, like you say, with the Teriyaki Boys and with Nigo on the music side of things over those couple of albums or few songs. I think this would have done very well elsewhere. So it's a shame that it didn't really get pushed any further.
yeah,
All right, what have we got in the notes? So this is classic kind of over the time in terms of self promotion and marketing, shameless self promotion and marketing, at least from Nego, which I think he did, throughout the whole kind of career of the Teriyaki Boys. It's just, make them dress in all of his
yeah,
clothes.
yeah,
They were his, male models effectively. So we see them in this video basically dressed, head to foot effectively in Bape gear, as you would kind of expect of the Teriyaki Boys of that time. They've got the shark hoodies and the Bape high top sneakers. I assume they were Bape jeans as well. Teriyaki Boy tees as well underneath, if I remember rightly.
mm,
And then, of course, it's of that time where BBC is still going reasonably strongly. So Pharrell is decked out in pretty much all BBC. He's got the Grail diamond and dollar, kind of like puffer jacket, a BBC t-shirt, if I remember rightly. The
yeah,
jeans. You can't quite see the sneakers, but I think they're a pair of ice creams. And then the hat that I very much dislike. With it came from the kind of, it was around the time they were doing like a tennis kind of range, and
yeah,
they had the character with the tennis ball and the tennis racket and stuff. So what's this going to be? Season 5-ish or something. And it's the hat with like the face on it that appears sometimes on the tennis ball. Really don't like it. Really
yeah.
not interesting graphic.
It's just it's funny, isn't it? Because there's so many graphics that look, even to this day, look good, but for some reason that kind of cartoony graphic just looks pretty horrible, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I think I remember that season. I think that was the first T-shirt that I ever got. In fact, it's probably the first BBC piece I ever got was from that collection. It had like a tennis. It had like this kind of like textured tennis ball on the T-shirt.
Yeah.
I was kind of gutted I lost that over the years, but yeah, the hat definitely isn't it, unfortunately.
Yeah, of that whole kind of tennis collection thing they did, I wasn't a fan of it. They had the logo with the crossed over tennis rackets
Yeah, yeah,
and like the
and like
little
a
little
broken string.
parrots or birds and stuff as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was not a fan of that, I have to say. And I don't think they sold particularly well either around that time. In terms of the video or the song itself, I have to give a shout out quickly to an ex colleague of mine, Yumiko, who is Japanese and who very kindly endured sitting through the video of this. I don't think it was her kind of music, but she sat through the music video and read the things that were online on Genius and very kindly took all of the Japanese and translated it all for me. So we could get an idea of some of what's being said, because I think probably at least half of the song is in Japanese. So we've got a rough idea. We've got most of it translated. So a shout out to her first. But starting with the title Zock On, the translation, it kind of translates directly as like crazy for you. And obviously we kind of get that throughout the song. It's, getting the attentions of a young lady, let's say. If you listen to the verses, and as we go through them, we'll talk about some of the content of them. But yeah, it's an ode to, let's say, an attractive female that you may see in a club somewhere, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think the way Pharrell is delivering that hook, it's definitely got that feel because he's got the kind of the trademark Pharrell head movements, as if he's serenading someone. Um, but yeah, definitely kind of has that feel to the song. Although the rest of it, especially in the visuals, doesn't really kind of hint at that being the subject.
No, the visuals themselves, so it opens up with a shot of a stage they've put together, but it's a collection of stuff that we've seen over the years from Nigo's own personal collection. So in his various Tokyo homes and in his toy showroom and stuff that he has. So we've got a lot of kind of vintage furniture in there in terms of there's a TV in there, there's a jukebox, um, other sort of various bits and pieces. There's some more modern stuff. So there's a Cause piece of art, a Kimpson's piece up on the wall behind
Yeah.
them.
You pointed out that that tiger rug as well in the video, which I'd never spotted that before, but
Yeah,
that's
so off to the sort of when you're looking at it, the left hand side, I don't know if it's a rug itself in the picture, but it's on the in the video. Sorry, but yeah, it's on the wall. It's like a tiger graphic, and it may be a rug in there, but it's the same kind of Asian style tiger rug thing that we now see them use for human made, and I've seen them use on other collections as well. So it's interesting to see that even those designs from this song, which is nearly 20 years old, 15 years old, or whatever, we're still seeing those sort of designs influencing him, being recycled, being used in more modern things that he's working on.
yeah. There was also the in the Nigo edit all the kind of the bat imagery, so all the kind of bat graphics fly across the screen, and it kind of reminded me of, I think it was a couple of years ago he did the collaboration with Lil Uzi, which had the like the bat graphic, and that's probably between those two instances of bat graphics. It's probably the only two that I can think of. But it's kind of interesting again that going so far back, there's sort of similar things to things that we've seen with human made over the last few years.
Yeah, that's it. If people haven't seen the kind of alternate version, it's got a Munster. I think it's like a Munsters kind of vibe to it. Because I think if you look at the CD cover or one of the CD covers, the graphic on there, the Teriyaki Boys and I think Nigo in it are kind of made up to look like vampires. I think one of them looks like a Frankenstein. They look like the characters from the TV show The Munsters. So I'm guessing in his version of the video, there's that kind of he's trying to give that feel of zombies, vampires, all those kinds of things. I don't think it was particularly executed all that well, and that's maybe why his video I don't think got a proper commercial release and isn't the official video. I put in air quotes, but yeah, like I said, interesting to see him do that again a couple of years ago. I know the graphics are slightly different, but yeah, coming back to these different images, especially of animals, which he tends to reuse over the years.
Yeah.
But I guess they have more of an importance in sort of Asian culture in general, those sort of symbols of birth years and sort of things like that as
Mm.
well. When we get into the song itself, we've got a slightly unorthodox intro to it where each of them kind of introduce themselves, which is an interesting kind of way to go about it. And they give some kind of little catchphrase or sound. P has the kind of, the iconic, I don't know how you even describe it,
Is
that
it the
Neptune's,
Foom?
yeah,
However
laser
you say it.
gun foom sound that we get on a lot of their songs, which is kind of, iconic. Buster gives a very surprised "oh," uh, which was very interesting. Inigo gives it like a "Hey yo, what up?" And I'm still intrigued to this day as to whether that's his
Yeah,
actual voice. I don't feel it is because I think in the video he's got his face covered as well, hasn't he, with a zip up hoodie.
he has. He's got the hoodie on. I mean, yeah, I've listened to it a few times and tried to think, does that sound like anyone else? It doesn't sound like anyone else, but I've never. I mean, have we ever heard Nigo speak in English?
Yeah, I not English. I've heard him in a few sort of Japanese interviews, and he's
Yeah, yeah,
generally very quietly spoken. Whereas this did have not necessarily an American accent, an Americanized accent, and the voice was a bit more kind of prominent. So it makes me wonder if that was actually him or not. And then we also have the Bape Sounds character that they had at the time, which I don't know why that character existed. I found always found it really weird when they had like the Bape TV stuff as well, and he was running around making weird noises. And he appears in this video and makes a strange noise. I find it slightly cringy.
yeah. I think he pops back towards the end of the song as well and kind of makes a dog noise. I guess you describe it as. But I always kind of liked that beginning bit. I don't know. There was something about that beginning bit with all the kind of weird sounds, and I think it's a pretty original way to start a song. I can't think of another song that starts in anything like that kind of way. So I guess they get full marks for creativity on that.
I guess it. And I don't know how well Teriyaki Boys were really known in Japan. I guess reasonably well known because of their affiliation with Nigo and with Bape, but I can't imagine they were massive. So I like the idea that it's like, we've had a couple of songs out previously which have been like reasonably popular, I guess, like Cho Large and the Fast and Furious one that you mentioned. But maybe this is that kind of introduction to the world and maybe to the wider world if it was eventually meant to get an international release.
Yeah,
It's that kind of quick intro as to like, who are the different members, who's appearing in this song, just to give the listener or the person watching the video an idea kind of the personalities and kind of what's to come in the track itself.
it's a good point. I don't know how big they were before they became Teriyaki Boys because um, and I can never remember kind of who was in which. There were it was a sort of a super group that Nigo put together, right? So there was Rip Slime, and then
Yep.
then there was the other group which I can't remember the name of. But yeah, how big they were. I guess in that scene in Japan, I'm thinking that they were pretty big and pretty well known within that scene, but kind of more certainly globally, but even locally in Japan, um, possibly not so well known. Um, but yeah, certainly internationally, it was the Teriyaki Boys stuff I think that put them on people's radars.
Yeah. I'll have to I should have actually asked my Japanese ex-colleague when she was very kindly translating this stuff for me whether she actually had heard of them previously or knew of them. I didn't sort of think to ask, but it would be interesting to see if, a normal person from that part of the world that isn't necessarily into hip hop is kind of
Yeah,
aware of them because they're obviously they still do shows now. Yeah, they do the festival circuit in the summer. I've seen them doing, and they've been around for a good sort of 20 odd years now. So I'd imagine they must have. Most people must be kind of aware of them, especially if those people are our kind of age and follow pop culture in any kind of way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think verbal, maybe he's kind of transcended the group in a way, but he certainly feels like a kind of an icon, like a Japanese icon globally, and you'll see him. He kind of pops up at events all the time. Um, I think he's still pretty well known. Obviously, Yoon is well known globally, on the fashion side of things, and I think he kind of stays tapped in through that into people's consciousness. But yeah, the rest of the group probably less so. I think, unless I'm speaking out of turn, but I think they're kind of more known for the group. But yeah, definitely they kind of pop up here and there. You still hear things, about them
Yeah,
performing and various other stuff.
I think, like you said, I think Verbal's definitely the one that's, like you say, transcended the group and gone on to. I was going to say bigger and better things. That's maybe a disservice to the other guys because I don't know what they're doing day to day. They may be doing much more important things, but he's the one that's kind of, I guess, got the most. He's in the public eye the most. He's still very involved in fashion and culture and sneakers and music and stuff like that. So he's the one we sort of see the most of. And tying that into the video itself and obviously the self promotion, we do see a classic ambush POW ring that he's wearing. I think it's Verbal that's wearing it. So again, those that don't know, ambush is a kind of fashion collaboration between Verbal and Yoon, as James just mentioned. And you're probably aware of some of their designs because it's the word "pal" written in that very sort of 80s graffiti MTV Raps type font with the explosion behind it and the pow and the exclamation mark. I think a lot of music artists, especially like Kanye, over the years have worn the chains with it on, and various other people have as well. So you would have probably seen that. So yeah, he's wearing the big pow multi ring. Also, probably for the first time ever seeing a very interesting eyewear that Verbal is wearing in this. It's a pair of sunglasses called The Mask by Linda Farrow. And I only managed to find that out just because friend of the podcast, Solution, a shout out to him. He still rocks a few pairs of these. I think he's got various different colors. And he's been on a holiday in New York in the last week. So I've seen all of his stories and pictures on Instagram, and he is currently rocking his pairs in New York as we speak.
Wow.
So I remembered he had a pair, and I had to message him to find out, like, what were they called again? Where are they from? I actually assumed they were something designed by Verbal or for Ambush or something. So when
Yeah,
he came back with the information, I was, quite surprised.
yeah, that was surprising. I thought that they were maybe Oakley's or something, or a brand that's kind of known for slightly out there kind of designs. I think they're the same sunglasses, that Steve Lacy has been wearing the last couple of years since he kind of rolled out his last album. I think he had a blue or a black pair of those on as well. Really cool sunglasses though. But now
They
now that I
do look
realize,
cool. Yeah, but I think you've got to be a certain kind of person to really pull them off.
yeah, I'm probably putting those on, and they're not going to work for me. I don't think they're going to work, but in theory they look great. Um, and then I think in the Nigo version of the video, Verbal's wearing them on top of the shark hoodie as well. So he's
Yes.
committed to that pair of sunglasses in both versions.
He's really into them, yeah. And if you watch the video and you do like the look of them, you can actually still buy them. They are still available 15 years later, 20 years later. And I'll put a link in the show notes. For a kind of like designer pair of glasses like that, they're reasonably affordable. I think they're only like
Mm.
$160 or €160 or something. So, if you want to dip your toes into the world of interesting fashion, then you can get online and get a pair. And I think you can get most of the colors as well.
You might see me making a horrible choice and wearing a silver pair of these at some point.
Try it out, mate. €160. It's worth a punt in it. You never know. It might look great.
Worth a try.
Yeah, I think it's like me with the millionaires that I was going to buy during the summer, and I spoke to, I think, on the last episode or the episode before that. I just
Yeah.
kind of I did the digital kind of try on in the app, and I looked like such a tit. I was like, no. As much as I want to go and buy them, and they're waiting for me, I look like an absolute idiot in these, and I
It's so
cannot pull them
difficult.
off.
It is so difficult to get sunglasses to fit. I've yet to find a pair that I can comfortably wear and that really suit me. So um, yeah, the millionaires definitely wouldn't be the ones for me.
Yeah, and they're very again, the design is very different to what you would see kind of on the street normally. So they kind of
Yeah,
immediately sort of stand out and draw attention straight to your face. And
they
yeah,
kind of
I can't pull them off.
no, they are. It's an interesting design. It kind of going a bit off topic, but they feel very much of their time, and I'm not sure how they look in 2024. But that's
I think nostalgia is doing a lot
yeah.
of the heavy lifting
I
at the
think that's
moment,
it.
let's
I
say.
think that's exactly
Yeah.
it.
Because I look at them as well and I sort of think, yeah, they haven't, they bought back obviously on purpose because it's the anniversary. The original design, the original kind of size and colorways and stuff. Not all of the colorways, obviously, but some of them. And yeah, I know like bigger sunglasses and more kind of out there stuff is popular again now, but yeah, they do feel of their time, definitely. And I think, yeah, a lot of the sales are come off the back of the fact that it's Pharrell working there again at the moment,
Yeah.
tying that into the nostalgia as well of how popular they were the first time round, and always mentioned in hip hop songs and in popular culture and stuff. And
There's definitely something special about that. There is that does have some appeal to it for sure.
yeah, and I think probably that's why I'm interested in them and why I like them, because if I looked at them and they had no relevance to Pharrell, I would look at
Yeah,
them and go, "What the fuck?
it's all about the
Who's wearing that?"
context.
Like, yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, there's a large pull from that side, but yeah, like I say, I can't pull them off. So
we might have to get
unfortunately, I'm out.
some shutter shades at the same time to pair them up with.
And yeah, the mask ones again, I'm not going to be able to pull them off. But shout out Solution, he pulls them off very well. And if you want to go and check out him wearing them, I'll put his link to Instagram in the show notes, if I remember. One little fact or tidbit I did find out when having a look into the sort of background of this video and this song, there's an interview with Verbal with DJ Semtex, and the beat originally, when Pharrell was kind of started to get involved and started to sort of make it, was initiated solely using buckets, which I found to be quite interesting. Is that because now you're a producer, so you can maybe tell me how the process here might have worked? World famous producer, I must say to people listening, and check that stuff out. Links will be in the show notes. Is that somebody in their head had a sound and they were like, that's the sort of sound that a bucket would make if it had something in it. So let's go and source some buckets and try and replicate the sound that's in my head. Or is it you're sat in a studio, there's some buckets over there. You know what we should do? Buckets, yeah. And you just start drumming about on some buckets. Like, I'd be really interested to know how
Yeah,
that originally came about.
yeah. It could be one of a number of things. I think if it was, well, my best guess of it would be that Pharrell had found some kind of sound clips that sounded like buckets, and just kind of programmed the whole thing to make it sound like he was beating on buckets. That would be that would be my guess. I mean, I don't know beyond a certain point. When was the last time of actually playing percussion live? That's the reason why I think it was more likely he kind of found some sound clips. He was like, I like the sound of this percussion. I'm going to kind of make something, and then to kind of go in his left field way of just making the whole thing initially out of those sounds. Um, that would be my guess. Obviously, I've no idea, but probably more so than. But then again, you never know. Maybe he did have the sudden epiphany that he wanted to make a song that sounded like buckets, and then went and recorded some bucket sounds.
It wouldn't
Um,
surprise me because I
that
I saw recently friend of the podcast, Brent, who's been working obviously with Pharrell for many years, and has recently worked on the Piece by Piece soundtrack, and the song that's coming out soon, which we'll talk about later. I'm pretty sure I'm not speaking out of turn. I think he posted this publicly, but he talked about how Pharrell specifically had the guitar part in his head. And from my understanding, Pharrell can't play the guitar really. So Pharrell was just sending voice notes to Brent of him humming it precisely how he wanted it to sound,
mm,
and then explaining like that needs to sound like that and that needs to sound like that and there it goes like that. And then Brent has to listen to those voice notes back and then play it himself. And then I think he even said in his post he would record his guitar part and then he would overlay Pharrell's kind of humming and vocalization on top of his guitar to make sure they all matched perfectly and everything as well. So, there are some interesting production techniques happening when Pharrell's involved.
yeah. The one thing that you can guarantee is that there's some imagination behind it. Whatever the approach was, however he came up with it. Just hearing that kind of story itself has a bit of magic to it, right? If you if you kind of hear the story about how it was created from smacking some buckets together or whatever it was, it does kind of remind me. I remember it was a bit after this period, but there was this kind of, I seem to remember on the forum there was this kind of running joke about Pharrell kind of playing with Rocket's toys or something to make the percussion sounds. These kind of really sort of thin sounding percussion sounds that sounded kind of almost like plasticky. Um, I think it may have been kind of from this point on, or it might have been a bit later, um, but yeah, it kind of made me laugh because it was. I seem to remember that being some kind of running joke.
The thing is, there's probably some truth behind some of that
Probably,
stuff as well, though, because you
probably,
look at you look at sound engineers that work in movies, and when you watch a movie, every sound effect you hear
yeah,
is added in post production. It's
mm,
rarely ever the actual sound that was recorded on the day, unless it's like the vocals or the speech. And like sound engineers for movies go to all sorts of weird and wonderful lengths to replicate real world sounds, but using completely different materials and things like that. So,
yeah,
there could be the sound of a car driving down the road and they want the tire sound. They won't record a car driving down the road. They'll go and find a material, they'll pair it with another material of some kind. Um, and they'll kind of tweak it and adjust it and in their kind of own tools and things.
yeah.
So it's a weird process, and yeah, these kind of sounds can come from anywhere.
I think it's, without getting too deep about it, but it kind of adds something from the creator's point of view into a song if it's got something that's taken specifically from that moment in time, whether it was from imagination or an actual sound recorded. It kind of adds something, it kind of weaves something into the track that's got like a bit of energy from that moment. So that kind of stuff is always really cool. It kind of brings to mind another Neptune's song that is like completely different. It was one of the ones that I think Chad produced solo, but it's like the Daiichi Miura, the chocolate song. where there was a studio session and it was just like someone just played this little riff on a synth and someone was talking over the top, and he just kind of sampled that, and it was just that one moment in the studio that he then added into that song, and it just sounds magical, but it's just like this random moment. Just stuff like that. It's always pretty cool. It's always pretty cool to kind of just capture some sort of magic from the moment into a song.
Yeah, and I think it's something that I don't know about Chad so much, but I know sort of I've heard from people that have worked with Pharrell, and he will do that a lot with songs. He will take odd little sounds and he will just they'll be buried under 100 other different instruments and layers in that track, but he'll want it in there because he in his head he can hear it. And he'll do stuff with like with I think we've talked about it on the podcast previously a long time ago, but he's taken a lot of samples from people that were involved in Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. And he would take vocal snippets, and some of them are very obvious in the last album, but some of them are so buried you don't even know they're there. And he does it because it's important to him, and it's his way of kind of helping those people as well, because he has to pay to clear that sample, he has to pay that person. So instead of just saying, yeah, I'll donate some money to you, it's like, I'm going to use your voice, I'm going to pay to use your voice, and you may not necessarily hear it, but that's his kind of way of giving back in a certain way,
Wow.
and still incorporating that what's an important moment and an important sound to him
Yeah.
into one of his tracks, even though we might not even realize it's there.
Yeah. No, exactly.
That was a tangent, wasn't it?
It
Let's get
was.
back.
Yeah.
Let's get back to this one. Let's get back to Busta Rhymes, who makes an appearance on this song as well. I do like a random Busta Rhymes appearance. I don't know how they would have pitched this track to him. I guess it's just Pharrell's working on the track. Can you just give us a verse? And here's some money, and he says okay. I don't know that he was particularly involved with the Teriyaki Boys previously, but he's there. He's got a nice little verse, a good little classic Buster flow. Nothing like majorly special, but I did like the one line that he kind of picks out, and it sort of shows that kind of playful Buster personality, where he says, "Jay said you ain't got to bring your purse out," obviously referencing Jay-Z song. But then he flips it and says, "Yes, you do, or you ain't drinking with her." And then you get the ow sound effect. I quite like that. I like those little sort of playful things from Buster. We also see him breakdancing or attempting to breakdance. I don't, people that do actually breakdance can tell me how technically good he was or wasn't. I'm not quite sure. But going on what we've seen recently in the Olympics, I think he might do all right. To be fair, he was getting around that floor quite well. And then I also noticed that he seems to have shot his part very separately from the rest of them. I assume, or I get the feeling that this song would have been put together sort of reasonably quickly in a session in Tokyo, and then probably a video shot at the end of it when they knew it's what they wanted.
Mm.
And so you see sort of Pharrell with the Teriyaki Boys, and then all of Buster's shots, he's off sort of by himself in a studio somewhere with a white background, effectively. So poor Buster had no real involvement in this apart from recording his verse, sending it off, and then turning up to an empty studio um, to film for a few hours one day.
I liked that they at least shot the bits with the white background, so it at least felt consistent with the other parts of the video. Because that the initial part where he's kind of on the old style TV or whatever screen that is,
Yeah.
it in again in the Nigo version of the video, that I think that's it. There's no kind of white background piece, and so it feels really detached as a collaboration. But at least in doing that, they kind of made it feel a little bit consistent, even though you never see them on the screen at the same time. But yeah, I kind of liked that as a touch, and the same with the Pharrell bits as well. I guess like it at least kind of holds together as a collaboration, which feels a bit nice.
It does, yeah. It certainly pulls it together. And I made a note as well that I actually quite like the way they've shot the vast majority of it in black and white, and then you've got the odd
Mm.
pops of color when they kind of put the graphics of the bits of furniture or whatever it may be behind them. I think it's an aesthetic that worked very well in this video, whereas it could have looked very sort of drawn out, especially the fact that Pharrell is wearing pretty much just all black and white as well. You know, it could have all just sort of blended into one and been a bit sort of drab. But I think with the kind of pops of color and the way it was put together, I think it worked fairly well.
Yeah.
Then we've got some translation work going on. So I'm not going to read all the translations of all the lyrics, sorry, throughout the song, but there's a few little bits and pieces that were translated for me, and I'll kind of mention. So, and apologies to anyone that is Japanese or speaks Japanese, as I absolutely butcher these words and say them in my own terrible accent. But for some clarity, so the part that Pharrell's singing, the Yabamina, that's kind of Japanese slang for somebody that's attractive. So he's saying Yabamina baby. So it means like attractive woman or even kind of sweet baby when it's put together like that. Just like, I guess a sweet, attractive woman that you like the look of. That's a quite creepy way of saying it, isn't it? That you like the look of that you've seen in a club and you think she's nice. And then a modai mondai loosely means something along the lines of it's such a big problem or something like that.
Mm.
I guess we don't have the context here. We don't have a Japanese speaker with us unless James, you're secretly holding
I'm not
out
going
on
to
me and you do.
surprise you, no.
No,
No.
okay. Oh, it's a shame. I guess with the context, it obviously changes the translation, the meaning of it slightly. But this is what I was given. We go on to a Rosie verse, and I liked the fact he uses I think it's a translation, but he says Yabamina again for like sweet baby, but then he also he says in the next line sweet break beats, so kind of tying in the beat of the song as well in the music. And I think the loose context of the song itself is that they're, like I say, in a club or somewhere of that sort of nature where they're you know surrounded by women also listening to music. So comparing the loveliness of this woman to the loveliness of the music that he's listening to and rapping along to. And as part of that, we also get not just Busta Rhyme breakdancing, but some of the Teriyaki Boys as well. And they are a very 80s kind of styled and sounding and influenced kind of group. I always got the feeling as well.
Yeah, there's always a big appreciation of the sort of the core essence of hip hop in the group. It's almost like a celebration of hip hop, isn't it? So they tend to incorporate different elements in whatever they do, and this one's no different with the dancing, like you say, coming in.
And then we've got Ilamari, who comes in sort of towards the end. I only made a note of this just because his name is Ilmari, which is actually a Finnish name. He is half Finnish, and the world is a small place. When, funnily enough, when I started doing this podcast, or maybe just before I started doing it, I was chatting to someone else I know here that's half Finnish, half Japanese. And he said, "Oh, I know this group called Teriyaki Boys. Have you ever heard of them?" And I said, "Yeah, I know them quite well, reasonably well enough to, know some of the music because of the Neptunes." And he said, "Oh yeah, there's a guy in Teriyaki Boys. Oh, we were best mates at school. We grew up together." So yeah,
Wow.
Ilmari, he is half Finnish, half Japanese, and yes, went to school with somebody that I know here in Finland. So it's a small world. I did reach out and try and get something arranged to see if I could get any kind of word from Ilmari, but unfortunately not. He was here in Finland during the summer as well. I noticed via his Instagram. So again, I sent a DM, but of course it just goes into it's from me, so it goes into the spam folder, and he's never looked at it, unfortunately.
That's amazing, though. I never knew that. Never knew it was half
And also,
Finnish.
just to tie it into my life, my son's middle name is Il-Murray as well. So there you
What's
go.
that? Is that a
No,
coincidence or oh, I see.
sheer
Okay.
coincidence. Just because there is a Finnish character from a famous Finnish book called Il-Murray, I
Wow.
assume this is where he gets his name, and it's why my son has that middle name, which I had no say in picking. So yes, just sheer coincidence.
Great name though.
I did not say to his mother, "Have you heard of this Finnish hip hop group?" There's one guy with a great name.
that's that's a pretty crazy coincidence, though. I have to say,
Yeah,
and
small world.
a few coincidences in there.
Yeah. Then we get to the bridge. The bridge is in Japanese. It loosely translates to "head to the dance floor." Everyone is losing control, so let's rock on. And then we get to the end chorus and the outro. We get a bit of color in the video again, and we cut back to all the characters and we get to see them all again. We've got Lisa, who I didn't mention previously, who kind of appears sort of throughout the video and adds some ad libs and sort of sound effects and stuff. She's wearing one of I think at the time, the fairly new Panda shark hoodie. We then get to see Buster breaking a bit more. And we get a nice shot of Nigo on his vintage exercise bike with his massively oversized BBC dollar chain, which we recently saw sold on Joopiter. Was it last year? I think that
Yeah.
happened now for some ridiculous amount of money. And I keep seeing it. I've seen it pop up a lot on Instagram recently. I can't remember the guy that bought it, but he seems to enjoy showing it off on Instagram and letting people wear it. So it pops up quite regularly in my Instagram feed.
Actually, just going back to Lisa, who has the kind of small vocals or feature on the song. I remember the name of the other group I said earlier. There were kind of two groups that Teriyaki Boys were formed from. I think the other one was, I've remembered now, M Flow, and I
Okay.
think that Lisa was either part of that group or kind of affiliated with that group. So that's kind of how she feeds into the whole puzzle of the song.
Yes, I'm fairly sure I saw that alongside her name at some point. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's
she would have
confusing.
come from that.
I'm sure there's a few, at least a couple of Japanese singers called Lisa, or with the name Lisa. I saw the name pop up again. I thought it was the same singer. There's a there's an anime that has a title sequence by a singer called Lisa, but it's not the same one. I think there's just multiple Lisas out there. It's not a unique
Yeah,
name.
they just kind of recycle those kinds of generic westerny kind of names as artist names. I think I've seen
Yeah,
that in the past where there's certain artists that just go by one name, and then you find there's loads of artists in that country that have exactly the same sort of name,
yeah.
and it is just like Lisa or Steve or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that does seem to be very much the way that the music industry works, kind of in Japan and Korea and China to some respect as well, where they have all these sort of, like you say, super groups, all these lots of individual groups, and then people sort of switch around between different ones, and they do crossovers and collaborations, and two people from one group might go with two people from another
Right.
group, and
Yes.
all that. It's a crazy, crazy way of doing it. Have we got anything else for this track? Anything you want to kind of bring up or mention?
I think as far as the song goes, it's a pretty simple kind of instrumental. There's nothing other than the drums that we talked about. There's nothing too crazy in there. It's quite a bit of cowbell in there, I think, which is always nice. Um, but yeah, it's the bass is kind of an interesting one. I think this kind of came out around the time that UK dubstep was sort of starting to blow up a little bit internationally, and so it's kind of got that kind of squelchy bass sound in it that you've never really heard in a Pharrell or a Neptune's production before or since, I don't think. So it's kind of kind of an interesting sound. I don't know if there was any intention to make it sound like a kind of a dubstep sort of bass. But yeah, other than that, musically, it's pretty straightforward. Um, I think the only other thing that for some reason, I really like in the song is we talked about the hook earlier and some of the translations on that, and then there's this bit towards the end where Pharrell has, I guess it's kind of an ad lib where he just kind of keeps saying giganto, which is just like a super fly ad lib. I don't know, like I don't think it really again means very much. It's just kind of like a superlative of, just like,
Yeah.
yeah, what it sounds like, just like huge or like bigger, like just like some kind of big deal. But it just sounds so cool on this song. Uh, that might be me being a bit superficial. It just sounds cool. Him
No, it
repeating
does,
that.
and it should. That's what a song's all about.
Yeah.
And again, I'm always kind of interested in like what the process may have been, kind of coming up with this, like how comfortable. Obviously, over the years, we've seen Pharrell do bits and pieces in different languages. We've seen him do Spanish a couple of times and stuff like that. But like, how comfortable and trusting would he have been to kind of? I know the stuff he's saying isn't, they're not long, complex sentences or rhymes or raps, but to just get like a language like Japanese stuck in front of you. And obviously, someone's going to sit there and teach him how to say the words and pronounce them. But like, how comfortable? I certainly wouldn't be comfortable kind of repeating those things and recording them and putting them in a
Mm.
song. So I always sort of wonder, like, did he take any convincing to do this, or was he just kind of like up for it and very trusting of whoever wrote it? And I assume that would have been, Nigo and the other Teriyaki
Yeah.
Boys.
I think that probably just speaks to, I mean, the friendship that those two seem to have is just one of just pure respect and trust. And I can imagine him just receiving whatever, um, from or kind of via the conduit of Nigo, and just being like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah,
I just think that their relationship just seems like that kind of relationship where there's just this such a respect and trust between them. But again, that's all, I don't know the detail of it, but from the outside looking in, that's kind of how it looks. So yeah, I would imagine that he wouldn't have needed much persuading. Probably the label and others might have been a bit more cautious about it, but
I can imagine people at the label sort of, thinking, oh, we've got like, Nigo, Bape is at its height, Teriyaki Boys, people know. We've got Pharrell, we've managed to rope Buster into this somehow. We've convinced him this is going to be great. And then it's like, yeah, we're going to do most of it in Japanese, including the Pharrell part. And they're like, what? How will we market this now?
it's definitely the bit that just makes that song so unique though, because it's the only time I think that he's done that. It's just a really unique song, right? It's
Yeah.
like you said, kind of just getting Buster randomly in on the song. Just the whole thing is just a super weird kind of mixture of stuff and influences, and all of the visuals in the video. Again, it's just a unique mashup of stuff. I mean, we didn't talk about the sofa, like the lips sofa. It's like
Oh,
a
yeah.
like a vintage piece, I think.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, everything is just this really weird blend of influences and just a complete mashup of stuff.
That
Um,
seems to be how like Nigo works with his music, though, doesn't he?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
you look at all the Teriyaki Boy albums, and then you look at the stuff that Nigo's put together as well himself, and it just seems to be he'll just sit there and go, "Who do I really like?" And he writes a list of all the people out, and then he's like, "Right, people that work for me, go and get me these people and get them on my album."
Yeah.
and they all just somehow kind of come together like the fucking Avengers or something,
Yeah.
and they all turn up and they all do their part, and yeah, you're like, how does Nigo know this person? How has he pulled that person in? But it's just the kind of the reach and the influence he has, I guess.
Exactly. And I like the so the cover art for the single. It's by the same artist who does a lot of the Ed Banger covers. It's a guy called So Me. I think So Me. I don't know if that's how you say it. But yeah, it's just a really unique style of art, which again, Nigo probably just really liked how that looked. But the cover looks really cool on this. I like it, and I like the pink color. Like everything about it looks pretty cool. And actually, I'd never seen. If you see the alternate video, if you watch right to the end, there's this kind of this weird moment where the group all kind of group together, and then this pink background drops down, and then it kind of morphs into the single cover, which is kind of, I'd never seen that before.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting how they kind of tied it into the cover art as well.
Yeah, I'd say it's one of those that it's probably gone under the radar of a lot of people. 'Cause like I say, it doesn't have a huge amount of views out there. It's been around for a while, and it's not one that I sort of regularly hear played anywhere. So if this is one that you have missed, if you are a newer fan of Pharrell and the Neptunes, and I know there's a lot of much younger people than us that listen to this podcast, who some of which probably weren't even born when this came out. Yeah, definitely go and check this one out because if you are a Neptunes fan, I definitely feel it's one that you will enjoy, even though probably plus 50% of it is in a foreign language.
Yeah, and that's worth noting as well. I mean, yeah, I have never known what the lyrics in the song mean. I guess this is for me. I tend to enjoy music more like for the sound and like how it makes me feel. So I'm not always super into like lyrics. It kind of depends. Some things I am, but for this one and for other Teriyaki Boys ones, it's always been just about like the sound and the feel of it for me. So yeah, definitely. If you don't know Japanese, don't be put off of listening to it. It's definitely worth kind of listening and absorbing.
Yeah, and I'd say in the nicest possible way. If you don't speak Japanese, you're not missing much lyrically. Let's put it that way. I've got the translations in front of me, and it's like these
Yeah,
boys ain't Jay Z or Shakespeare. Put it that way. I'm sure in Japanese it's a different, whole different vibe, whole different thing. But when you translate it to English, it's just like, oh, okay, cool. There's nothing particularly special there. So I think you could just enjoy it for the vibes.
exactly.
All right, cool. Should we get on to some news? Because we've been away for 3 weeks and there is a lot of
That's a lot.
news.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start with a piece by piece that we've been talking about for many months now. There's loads of news with this coming up. It has had its premiere. It had, I think it was was it the Telluride Film Festival or something? It had the premiere. There is also an official release date for it, which I now can't remember and I didn't write down, but it
I think it
is
says 11th of October, but
that's the
I
one.
don't know if that varies country to country. I'm not sure.
It does because I'm about to say I then went and harassed my local chain of cinemas and were like, "Your coming soon lists all of the movies that are coming out up until February next year. Where is Piece by Piece?" And they were like, we don't know." And then yesterday I harassed them again and said, "There's an official international release date for it. Like, when are you getting it?" And they're like, "Middle of November, we think." Great. So I've got to wait a month longer than everybody else. So let's see if I can get a copy from elsewhere. I may have to like utilize some contacts and try and get some kind of screener of it or something. I don't want to wait until the middle of November for it. But yes, if you're in the US, the UK, and probably most other countries, you can go and see it in October. We've also got the first piece of official audio. So, as we briefly mentioned earlier, a friend of the podcast, Brent, was also working on that. Very funky guitar driven piece. I would say it sounds like it comes from an animated movie. It sounds very much in the genre of Despicable Me, Lego, all those kinds of things that he sort of, works on in outputs or has been outputting recently. But not a bad song. Any thoughts on it?
I really like the part towards the end. I'm not mad about the melodies on the kind of the initial part of the song.
Yep.
But I really like the kind of like the brighter part that comes in, especially towards the end. There's like this little drum roll, and then this bit that comes in,
Yes.
which, to be honest, that's the bit that I would listen on repeat if I could, rather than the rest of it. And actually, I think that's the bit that when I see stories and things being posted, that's the bit that I tend to hear even Pharrell using. It's really nice. It's
Yeah.
got that kind of like big kind of marching band type of feel with horns and stuff. But yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah. It's definitely a song that gets better as it progresses. Once it gets a bit more, there's a few more layers to it once it gets a bit further after a couple of minutes and it expands a little bit. Like you said, there's that sort of marching band type feel to it. And there's a nice little breakdown in there as well, which I really like. So yeah, not like it's not going to blow the world away, but a good track nonetheless. And again, there'll be a link in the show notes for it to go and watch it on YouTube, but you can also get it on, I think, on Spotify and Apple Music and everywhere else now as well. The most interesting thing for me that I've been talking about for weeks, Lego. So right after we did the last show, the Lego set that we've been speculating about that goes with the movie was announced, and pre-orders went up immediately, quite surprisingly. So I went straight in there and got my pre-order in. We're recording this on Tuesday, the 17th of September. The official release is this Friday on the 20th. So if I manage to get this edited and out by Friday and you're listening to this beforehand, then you can go and buy a set from Friday onwards. But you can also order beforehand as well and pre-order. And I think it ships out on Friday. So I definitely got my one in. In terms of what's in the Lego set, it's pretty much exactly as to what leaked previously, and I think what I put in the chapter art a couple of episodes back, where it's a black kind of rocket ship with a rainbow coloured plume of smoke coming from the base of it, and then we've got, I think, just 2 minifigures in it, but then you get a selection. I don't know if you get all of these or you just get some of them, but there are then 51 different figure heads that are kind of interchangeable. We were speculating, I know myself and James and a few other people were speculating that they look like some of the characters from the movie. There's one that has like a birthmark on the face. We're like, oh, that looks like Yams. I think from what I'm told, none of them are based on actual real life people or characters. They're just meant to be a varied representation of just people out in the world, basically. So no matter who you are, there's meant to be like a minifigure head that represents you in some way. It will look like you in some kind of description. Um, I'm sure they must have taken influence from some people. That Yams one with a big kind of birthmark on the face looks exactly like him.
Yeah.
We're also speculating, I think, with Brent that there's one in there with a kind of an old school Brent with a goatee moustache and beard and stuff that looks a little bit like him, suspiciously like him. So hoping that was based on him and his look. And it'd be interesting to see once it arrives, which other ones we can potentially identify if they have been modeled on actual people.
Yeah. I suppose if they're intended to look like anyone could take the head and say it was them, theoretically we can kind of draw all sorts of conclusions from them. I saw people saying there was a yay one in there, but it just might be someone with a like a goatee, beard, and moustache. So yeah, I think we can probably
Comes with
pretend. Let's
comes with a can of
pretend.
nitrous oxide in one hand.
Potentially.
Yep. Are you going to be getting a set Are you into the Lego stuff at all?
My wife collects Lego or has done in the past. So I'm keen to. Uh, I was a bit disappointed about kind of how specific it was. And I get that we haven't seen the movie yet, so we kind of don't know the context for it, and it does look really cool. But I don't know. I mean, actually, I say I was disappointed by it being too specific, but also the fact that it didn't really kind of tie into anything that we really know Pharrell for. But then I guess it's a kind of a tie into a movie, so it should relate to the movie, and presumably it does. So I'm kind of reserving judgment, but it definitely looks cool. I guess selfishly wanted something that was going to be a bit more something that I could relate to, that kind of tied in a bit more to what we know Pharrell for over
Yeah.
the last 20 plus years.
Yeah, I'd seen rumors and like renders of like his old Enzo that he had, and I think the Ferrari makes an appearance in the movie.
Right.
So I was hoping maybe we'd get that, and then I was hoping we would get like maybe a little minifigure of him through different stages of his career with the different
Yeah.
like kind of outfits that we've seen him in the promo trailer and stuff. I think that would have
Mm.
been quite cool. But yeah, we know what Pharrell's like. We know he doesn't like looking back at anything and producing stuff based on things he's done in the past. Um, I would fully imagine that Lego probably pitched stuff like that and said, let's do you throughout the years, or let's do
Mm.
you in this certain situation, or I don't know, music video set, or whatever it might be, or yeah, with your Enzo or your Rolls Royce or whatever it might be. And I can, yeah, I'd be fairly sure that yeah, he would have given that an immediate nope. Like yeah, do something just out there, completely different,
Yeah.
but in some way still tie it into the movie, please.
Yeah.
And so far, I've heard mixed reviews, I would say, after its initial premiere and then, subsequent screenings. I think generally what I've heard so far is that it's a nice, feel good movie with some good music in it, and it, tells his story quite well. I have also seen a lot of people kind of find it very strange and slightly jarring that it's a documentary and it's representing real things that actually happen in real life, but with Lego characters. So I saw somebody from a newspaper somewhere, some movie critic, talking about like in the movie they show the scene when he interviews with Oprah and he's crying, and they're like, it's a documentary, like show the scene of him on the Oprah show, but no, it's done in Lego. And then there's also they play out the part where he finds out his grandmother died that he's talked about in songs and stuff previously, and he kind of drops to his knees and he's crying. And they were like, yeah, it's a really kind of poignant moment and an important moment in his life. So it's weird to see a Lego character dropping to their knees, going, no, you can't really empathize quite so much with an animated Lego character on the screen.
Mm.
So I know some people kind of found it a little bit weird they went down that route. I get why they did it, and he's talked about it quite a lot, recently in promoting the movie. But it's a weird one. So I'm intrigued to see what it's actually going to be like.
It's a really bold decision. Yeah, I'm the same. I'm kind of withholding judgment till I watch it. But at the very least, it's a really bold decision to try something so different. And at the end of the day, that's what Pharrell does best. Um, and kind of whether it works perfectly or not is maybe that's not even the point. It's just about trying something that's completely brand new and different. And yeah, I'm excited to see it. I'm looking forward to it. I think I might need to be waiting till November as well. Actually, potentially in the UK, it might be
Oh,
November
really?
rather than October. But yeah, definitely come that time, I'll be trying to see it as soon as I can.
Yeah, and I'm intrigued to see it in the cinema and not at home, just because again,
Mm,
I want to see what they've done, see or hear what they've done with the music itself and how that is kind of portrayed in the movie itself. Because obviously, we've seen all the different artists that appear. Again, there are shots of like the studio sessions with Gwen Stefani, Justin Timberlake, and stuff like that. So I'm really intrigued to see if they use like the original audio from the studio sessions,
yeah.
whether they kind of recreate stuff and how it's then been kind of mixed and mastered to then, sound amazing in the cinema as well.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty cool to see.
But yeah, looking forward to it being released at least in the States, and then we'll get a good indication once people out there, the general public and people that we know actually get to go and see it and watch it. So looking forward to it. A bit of news, something that happened, I think, while he was at a screening of the movie. This is Pharrell versus, I don't know if this person was from PETA or some other animal organization, but someone I found this interesting just because of how it happened, but the reaction, but also how we kind of got to that situation. So, for some context, they were at a screening. He was doing a Q&A before or after the screening, and a young woman came in with a big placard saying, I think it said something like Pharrell, stop torturing and killing animals or something. Now, this is obviously in reference to the work he's doing at the moment with Louis Vuitton, where everything is made of leather, effectively. A lot of it is made of leather. But prior to this, what I was quite surprised about during the summer, just before the summer, he was wearing that custom made
Oh,
python skin
yeah.
jacket, which they have released as well, but I think each one is specifically custom made. It's an obscenely expensive, it's like a 70 grand jacket or something. I think they custom make each one for each person. And I remember at the time thinking, like, that's asking for a bit of trouble, maybe, because it is quite blatantly leather and python skin. You can see, the design, the patterning of it and stuff. And I was surprised that he would kind of put himself out there like that, wearing an item like that, knowing that it would potentially get some backlash. Now, there'll be an argument that, he works in a fashion house, they use leather. It's kind of part and parcel of it. But it did surprise me. But then what sort of surprised me more was when this happened, it's about a week ago, I think, or something now. I think most famous people, most celebrities probably would have just stood there and gone, okay, and not said anything and just waited for security just to turn up and drag the woman off who constantly just kept repeating, like, Pharrell, stop torturing animals. I was quite surprised he actually engaged with her and actually responded to her and he said, "Yes, I do that. I'm sorry. Yes, I am doing that. I'm really sorry. We're looking into it. I'm trying to fix it." And and then he did the kind of classic Pharrell, like, "Everyone say God bless you," as this girl got dragged out by two security guys. Have you seen the video itself?
I've seen it. Yeah, yeah, I have seen it. Yeah, it's quite a long video as well. It took them a while to escort the young lady out, so it goes on for quite a long time. And then also, I think at one point, Pharrell says or asks them to kind of stop so that he can speak. So he actually asked them to stop so that he could speak to her and kind of acknowledge the situation. And then once she was escorted out, he addressed it further and said in the background, things are happening to kind of change that situation or whatever it was he said. But
I like the fact he did have a little dig at the woman as well, just to kind of
yeah,
get a little elbow in there. And he said, "If she'd have stopped shouting at me, I was prepared to talk to her and tell her that we're actually doing something and working on it at the moment." But unfortunately, this girl had just gone in there with like the one idea, which is just, I'm just going to scream and cause a problem. Which, yeah, that's what you do in your protest. That's fair enough. You do it in whichever way you want to do, and which you think is effective. That's fine. But I don't know, if you had a bit of nous about you, I would like to think that as soon as he actually engages with you or anyone at that level engages with you and says, "Yes, I do that. I'm sorry," then like, stop and engage with them and actually try and get some more information out of them. Because like he says, he would have happily have spoken to her publicly and told her about what Louis Vuitton, and I'm sure all the other brands that come under LVMH are actually doing to try and eradicate the use of leather and replace it with more sustainable products that still feel like leather and look like leather and stuff like that. So a very interesting reaction I felt.
Mm. That coat was pretty crazy though, the one you talked about before, because
It was, yes.
I remember feeling the same way uh, in at this time in this year, just and on that stage as well, because I think that's almost when he's most visible in the fashion world at the minute, is at his runway shows.
Yeah.
It was at the show, right? It was
Yeah, that's where he wore it for the first time,
and
and then he
he
was
kind of
wearing it
came on.
subsequently for like weeks after, like he tends to
Yeah,
do. He
yeah,
just sort of lives in one item that he really likes.
yeah. I just remember saying that and thinking, okay, exactly what you said. I think.
All right, more movie news. So Atlantis, the musical that we've previously talked about, as they've kind of brought new cast members in and been recording and stuff like that and filming, has an official release date of May 2025. And it has an official title, which I just said, Atlantis. I think I've said this before. I am not a musical fan whatsoever. So this is something I don't even know if I'll end up watching this. I probably will end up forcing myself to, because I would like to see what the story's like and stuff like that. But the fact it's a musical massively puts me off, really does. But I've got until May to convince myself to watch it. Is this something you'll be checking out when it comes out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the crazy thing at the minute is just how much output there is here. I mean, this is it's pretty hard to believe that there are this many projects and Pharrell outputs more generally going on at the same time. We've waited. I mean, how long since um, we've had the kind of the Despicable Me soundtracks in between, but since um, in the last 10 years, there's not been a huge amount of output in terms of solo project and N.E.R.D project. But just for all of these projects to suddenly kind of be coming along is pretty crazy at this point and at this stage in Pharrell's career. And I feel like at the minute, it's just he's just everywhere. He's just everywhere, which
Yeah.
is it's the Lego Movie, it's the LV stuff, the Joopiter auction, which we'll talk about in a minute probably. But he's just been everywhere this last couple of months, like almost inescapable, which is it's just pretty surreal. I would say at this point, kind of having been a fan of his for so long, and just to see this much output coming. So yeah, I mean, I'm not averse to musicals. I'm not a huge fan, but yeah, it's something that I would probably check out. To be honest, maybe if you do as well, you might get sort of converted to musicals. It might become your next favorite genre.
I don't know about that. Even things like Hamilton, that, everybody sort of raves about. I still have never got around to watching that because I see clips of it and I'm like, oh, it just I feel cringe. I just don't like it.
This
Stuff
could
like
be the
that.
one then. This could be your gateway.
I don't think the gateway. It might just be my one and only. But let's see how it goes. I don't think I'll be. Let's say I don't think I'll be paying to go and see it at the cinema, but I will watch it. Once I can access it at home on a streaming channel of my choice and just watch it in the comfort of my own lounge. We talked in the last episode about the bad times that BBC retail seems to be having with the various flagships closing down and things like that. BBC Hong Kong has now got a new location for its flagship store. Again, I'll put a link in the show notes. I know the Hong Kong store is reasonably popular. Whenever I sort of see it online, it seems to be doing sort of reasonably good sort of traffic and people in there and stuff like that. They've got a new location. From what I saw of the video when they tried to show it, it's kind of buried about 2 floors down at the bottom of a shopping mall. Now, obviously, a shopping mall in Hong Kong is different to, I think, a shopping mall that I imagine here that I go to or that you get in the UK or the US. Because I think when they showed the little route that you take to get down there, as you went down there was also like a Dior store and Louis Vuitton store and stuff like that. So it's a shopping mall, but there's a high end wing to it as well, and they are down in that sort of rough area. So I'll add that to the show notes if you are based in that part of the world or you're planning on going there in the future, then you can follow that little journey that they show you to find out where you can go to see it. Tangentially speaking of BBC EU, a few new releases recently from over there. One that kind of caught my eye recently was, I think, last week or the week before. They are, I guess, retroing the OG Diamond and Dollar zip up hoodies, also in the original colorways as well. Slight tweaks to the colors. They're not exactly the same shades, but they're pretty much there. Now, I know me and you have a habit of looking at a lot of BBC stuff and critiquing it based on various factors. What's your feeling on the retroing of these classic hoodies?
Yeah, I like that. And again, this is more from a kind of a selfish point of view. I think there were certain things that either I was too late on, or kind of a little too early for me, or I didn't have any money to get things at the time. So yeah, to get the opportunity now to kind of get some stuff in like OG colorways, I'm definitely here for that. And I've been feeling for a while like I kind of wanted to pick up a couple of pieces. So yeah, this might be one of them. But yeah, no, definitely a fan.
Nice. So, what's your rocking one then? I I'm a fan of the pattern. I'm just not a fan of zip up hoodies. I
Mm,
wish they'd also released the pullover hoodie. They might still do. I don't know, because originally when this pattern came out, they did the crew neck and the pullover hoodie and the reversible t-shirts and a few other bits and pieces as well. So I'm hoping if these sell well, then we may get some other iterations based on the different sort of OG designs. If we get a normal pullover hoodie, then I'll definitely be involved. But
mm.
for zip ups, I'm not really a fan, so
That's true.
I'll
That's
probably
true,
pass
actually.
on them. You also mentioned a moment ago the output of Pharrell at the moment. He does seem to be peak 2010 Pharrell at the moment, where he's in a new country every single day. One day he's in Korea, then he's in. I think the other day I saw him then fly to LA, then he was in New York, then he's going to all these premieres around the place. Then he magically popped up in Germany at the Adidas headquarters 2 days ago, I think, as well. So he's all over the place. But to go with that and the Doodles project that he's been working on or collaborating on, we had one song a couple of weeks back, the Coil Ray one, which originally came from Little Uzi Vert. We've now got the second single, Can't Hold Me Down, with Lil Wayne, Lil Yachty, all the Littles, and Kyle Rich. So my thoughts on this are quite quick and simple. They're exactly the same as the last one we talked about, the Coil Ray one, and they're like, okay, it's cool. It goes in that whole bundle of animated movie music, sounding a lot like the Despicable Me stuff, the Lego stuff, etc., etc. Have you heard the new one?
I have. I think. I mean, probably the more interesting thing about it is just that sample, that vocal sample, and the way he kind of chopped it up so chaotically. it's kind of interesting. I've listened to it a couple of times. I'm kind of on the fence of how much I'm gonna keep listening to it, but I definitely found that an interesting choice. Yeah, the way he kind of carved up that sample, what the thinking was behind it. But yeah, I've listened to it a couple of times. I can't, and I'm a fan of Wayne and Yachty, but I can't really remember. I can't picture in my mind how those verses even sounded. They just weren't that memorable to me on that song. That project is a little confusing to me as well. Again, it's just like a yet another thing that's kind of going on at the minute, and I don't really know enough about it. I know it started with the NFT project initially. I want
Yeah.
to say, um, and then it sort of, I guess it's still kind of linked in with that NFT project, but yeah, I just don't know enough about it to get particularly excited about it at the minute.
Yeah, to be fair, I only listened to the track a couple of times. It didn't blow me away, so I've never kind of gone back to it. It might be one of those ones that sort of grows on me once I listen to it a few more times, or once it kind of
Mm.
crops up randomly as I'm cycling through my sort of library when I'm sat in the car or whatever. But yeah, it's meh. And in terms of the Doodles project, if I remember rightly, it's not in my show notes, but I think they also announced the date for that as well for the kind of movie, because it's, was it Doodles in Dullsville or something it's
Yeah,
called,
yeah.
something along
Is it
those
is
lines.
it a full length movie or?
I believe so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
So again, I don't know the kind of full background of the whole Doodles thing. Like you say, I know there was that NFT thing previously. I do know there is a tangential connection in terms of Doodles and Pharrell. His manager's husband works for the company that manages Doodles stuff. So there is kind of a link and a crossover there, which is why some of this may have come about.
I think they brought him on as like a. I want to say they brought him on as creative director,
Creative, yeah,
like a couple of
exactly,
when it
yes.
first got launched. But this is like the first thing that we've really seen from him these last couple of songs. I don't know if there are going to be more songs for the film or if it's just the two.
From what I read, he's done just the two or maybe three for the album. Then there's like other
Okay,
people,
right.
contributing to the album as well. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see if more comes out of it. Speaking of albums, we have heard the Clipse album is nearly, in air quotes here, Pusher or Mal, I can't remember which one of them said it, but last week one of them mentioned, I think on Instagram, that everything is done. They are just waiting on the final feature to be sent over to them. They didn't mention who that feature would be, but if it's somebody that's holding up the whole release and world tour of an album, then you got to think it's somebody like Jay or somebody of that kind of stature, I would imagine, because they wouldn't be waiting around for just anybody to get back to them. So I guess we're about 99% there. So let's hope we get this sooner rather than later. I think we spoke when we saw each other in the summer. You were going to plan on trying to go to one of the shows as well, weren't you?
Yeah, I don't think have they been released yet.
No,
The
still
dates?
not.
No, no. I would definitely like to go. And I'm super excited about this album. Uh, it's been a while since I've looked forward to a hip hop album as much as this. I'm curious who this feature is. Like you say, whether it's Jay. People were saying it's like Jay. A lot of people were saying Jay or Kendrick. I wonder if there's any chance of it being Ye, given that he's kind of produced. He featured them on his album a couple of years ago. That would be pretty exciting. Although I don't know what a Ye verse would sound like for the album, but the fact that they're waiting on it, that would be pretty exciting. I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I would feel if there was a a Ye feature. I know
we've
this
spoken a
is
lot about this.
yeah, this is a conversation we've had a few times. I know, and we kind of get quite into it. And I don't know how a
I
record
would
company would feel about a Ye verse on a very very hyped up album as well,
true, true.
and a very very heavily teased album, and an album I feel that is going to have a lot of marketing money behind it. Like, is it a risk they want to take?
It's kind of post the whole Pusher and Ye. I don't know what their relationship was like in the last couple of years. I think since they last did stuff together, there was like a rift there. There's a whole kind of Adidas rift between the two of them. Yeah, so it's probably not going to be Ye, is it?
No,
But
I
let's
wouldn't put my
see.
money on it. Let's put it that
No,
way.
no, it's an outside shot.
Yeah. Let's get to we'll rattle through our last sort of few bits of news that we've got here. Jupiter stuff that we mentioned earlier, a couple of things from them. They seem to be sort of ramping up in terms of the collaborations and auctions they're doing. They've just done one with G Dragon. I don't know what a
Mm.
G Dragon is. I don't know if you know. I
I'm a
assume
big,
he.
yeah.
You can say you're a big fan,
I'm a
like
huge fan of
Steve.
G Dragon.
What the
Yeah,
fuck are you talking
yeah.
about?
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'll let you. I'll let it slide. But no, he's a he used to be in a K-pop group, like one of the like second generation K-pop groups that was like one of the first big ones called Big Bang. And since then, he's kind of gone off into. He hasn't put any music out, I don't think, for almost 10 years. But he's kind of gone into fashion and various other things. But yeah,
I
pretty,
assumed
pretty,
that was the probably the case. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but yeah, interesting guy.
Yeah, so I saw some of the bits that they had auctioned up. There was a lot of his kind of tour stuff and some of his sneaker collection and stuff like that. The auction did end a couple of days ago. I did check in just before it ended. And most bits hadn't really reached the reserve prices, but I think with the Jupiter stuff we've seen previously, nothing really does
Mm,
until the last hour or so anyway. And I haven't really checked back to see what stuff sold for, but I know there were a few pieces such as a Jacob and Co brooch that I think went for quite a ridiculous price because I saw Jacob posting about it after the fact. And the prices of the other bits and pieces, despite not having at that point met the reserve, they were still creeping up and they were still kind of quite high for what they were. So I imagine it was reasonably successful, as all of these Jupiter auctions seem to be. Jupiter also teaming up with Nigo for a not a hotel experience. So not a hotel is effectively a kind of hotel. They have, I think, a bunch of different hotels across mainly Japan. I don't know if they are elsewhere, but I know predominantly they're Japanese based. And I think the idea is they market themselves as we're not a normal hotel, we're more of like a lifestyle experience. You don't feel like you're in a hotel, you feel like you're in a luxury home of some kind. They've kind of teamed up with Nigo to create a whole kind of hotel experience where he is outfitted. I guess it's like a whole sort of villa type place I think you get. And he is like, been involved in the decoration of all of it, all of the kind of the artwork that's in there and stuff like that. So from what I can remember when I put the link in the show notes, I think if you win this competition, or sorry, competition, the auction, I think you get one night at this special place before it opens to people being able to book it normally.
mm.
And then as part of it, you then get a couple of nights at one of their other Tokyo, not a hotel, hotels. They're very high end ones. So you get a few nights away in Tokyo, basically. And one of those nights being basically sleeping in a room or in a place that Nigo has designed. So interested to see kind of what kind of bids that pulls in. What else have we got? A little bit of news that came out this week. No surprise to anybody, I don't think. But it was, I think Pharrell confirmed that himself and Chad are no longer on speaking terms. Obviously, they have this ongoing legal issue, let's say, around the Neptunes and the naming rights and splitting the money from that and all that sort of thing that we've talked at length previously. You can go to episodes 49 and 50 where we talked a lot about it. It's a shame to see it's got to this point where they're not even speaking. I guess any communication is just has to go via lawyers now, and this probably is on the advice, I guess, of their
Mm.
management and their lawyers, just to kind of like not engage with each other and let them sort things out separately. I know Pharrell sort of said in his quote that it made him feel a bit sad, but he was still his brother, he still loved him, all that kind of stuff. But I guess not a great position for either of them to be in, after so many years working so closely together and growing up together, for it to kind of get to this point where lawyers tell you like not to speak to each other. It's it's a shame.
Yeah, it's definitely sad to see it get to that point.
I have also seen Chad respond to a couple of comments on Instagram, and he did also respond to me privately. I won't quote exactly what he said, but I know he feels, from what he has said publicly, he feels kind of really down about this, and you know, uh, I get the feeling that he desperately wants it to improve, relations to improve and to get better and to kind of get over this and get past it. And I think that's what he's hoping for eventually once they can, resolve the ongoing issues that they have, which I'm sure they must be able to. Because let's be honest, they're probably not really going to work together that much as the Neptunes now going forward. So how much money are they really making from the name of the Neptunes? Obviously, all the back catalogue stuff still gets split 50-50.
Yeah,
But anything going forward obviously isn't going to be impacted anymore. So I don't know. My kind of 2 cents is, if I was Pharrell, I'm looking like the bad guy here. Just go and put it in a holding company that both of them have a 50% stake in, and just leave it alone
yeah,
and never touch it ever again and never deal with it ever again and just get over it.
yeah, something like that. I don't know. Like I remember last year, it was either in Pharrell interviews or a Tyler interview, or maybe Tyler interviewing Pharrell, or the other way around. But they were talking about this N.E.R.D album, and I yeah, I just haven't seen anywhere what it means for that project, and yeah,
It
what's
wasn't Chad. I think I spoke about this previously. I spoke to Chad about this. Chad had no involvement whatsoever.
oh wow, okay,
This was Pharrell using the N.E.R.D name, which he has
uh,
control over. Pharrell owns the N.E.R.D name, so this was him just using that name basically. And I think using the N.E.R.D name just because of the bits of music he was working with or planning to work with was stuff from the archives that they had both previously
I
worked on
see, I
and worked
see.
on as a group. And yeah, that was for an interview that Tyler did in Paris. Was it for the last book that came out? I think maybe around that
It
time
may have
they were
been about a
promoting
year
that.
ago.
Yeah, and I very briefly spoke to Chad about this, and Chad, yeah, he said that's nothing to do with me. I haven't been involved in any of it. So yeah, that is just Pharrell utilizing the name because he can utilize the name. He's allowed to. Again, a bit of a weird way of doing it and a bit of a shame, but who
Yeah,
knows how it works. And then final bit of news, not great news, unfortunately. Something in the Water 2024. Tickets went on sale last week, I believe, to local residents, and veterans wanted to go and get an early bird ticket. As of about 2 days ago, the whole event's been cancelled.
wow,
They have cancelled one previously a few years ago, and then they also moved one to Washington because they were having issues in Virginia. They then bought it back last year, and it wasn't great from what I saw.
there was the year where there was like a hurricane or a typhoon or something.
That was the first one a few years
Oh
back.
god,
Yeah,
okay,
the problem with the last one was Pharrell obviously headlined the last night, the final night, I should say, and he cut his set short by about 6 songs just because he wasn't feeling it, basically. So for whatever reason, But yeah, this year, unfortunately, they haven't said specifically why it's been cancelled. But I think something in the statement said something along the lines of, they wanted to bring the absolute best experience to Virginia Beach and they couldn't for whatever reason. So they've decided to cancel it for now. And I think they said come back next year. So it's not even like they're postponing for a week or a couple of weeks or something. They're literally just scrapping it for this year, back to the drawing board. So that must be a fairly big frustration for all involved. Because, like I say, tickets had gone on sale, marketing had started, Pharrell, Pusha, all these people had already posted on Instagram about it and were promoting it. So, the push had begun. And to then have to kind of pull the plug, well, within the space of a week or something. Yeah, not great.
Yeah, bad news.
I did also look at dates like I did last year as well and look at whether I could make it. Now I'm kind of glad I didn't follow through with that. All right, and let's wrap it up kind of quickly here. I just want to mention a few bits and pieces. We spoke on the last podcast about bits and pieces we picked up during the summer. Something I completely omitted and forgot to mention was the various sneakers I picked up during the summer. I had someone reach out to me afterwards and they said it was quite surprising I hadn't bought any sneakers amongst all the other bits and pieces I'd been buying during the summer. To which I had to point out I have actually bought quite a few sneakers during the summer, as I normally do. So, just to mention some bits and pieces quickly, a nice pair of yellow Spizikes just before the summer. I managed to get a pair of the Paris Wet Cement Jordan 4s. I actually won a raffle. Oh my God. I got a bit of a local deal locally. That's what happens with local deals. They are locally. Yeah. Somebody was selling off some of their sneaker collection here in Helsinki. They happened to have some NMDs from the third pack, I think it was, and it's like the crazy multicolor pair, which I think are like yellow, then loads of other colors. I've got the tennis hue version of them, and I absolutely love them. So this guy had an NMD pair, so I grabbed them. He also had a pair of solar hues, the kind of black, purple, green ones. Grabbed them. And as part of the deal, we had a pair of Yeezy 550 highs as well. I took the lot for a bargain, €100, and they were all in almost perfect condition.
Wow.
Now, the Yeezys, I must say, they were slightly better looking than I expected in person, but we all know my feelings. I'm not going to wear a pair of Yeezys. So, luckily, my kid, my child, who is now as tall as me and has the same shoe size as me, at 13 years old, very happily took the Yeezys off my hands, and he has them and he's been wearing them. And to be fair, they do look quite good on him. So he's happy with those. Also, a couple of other little bits I didn't mention. A fly or die rug from Curves. I think most people will have seen this on social media over the last 12 to 18 months. It's a round rug designed as the CD from the Fly or Die CD. I've got that in my office. And then today, a new Cause piece turned up, the new Holiday Shanghai model, I guess you call it, a brown version. On the same day, or I think a few hours before, another release from Cause was dropping, which I wish I'd actually waited to actually get. But I think that's everything that I've purchased recently. And what about you? Have you got anything interesting that you've picked up over the summer? Anything you're looking at the moment?
Nothing particularly crazy that I've picked up. I think the only pair of shoes that I bought over the whole summer was a pair of Salehi Bembry Crocs.
Oh, you got a pair of those.
Yeah.
Rafa
Which
will be
are
very jealous because he was after a pair.
Oh, really? They
Yes.
so it's the one. It's the I can't remember the name of them. The ones that have the like little strap on the back, but I've never thought about purchasing a pair of Crocs before, but what they're made out of, it's pretty mind blowing how comfortable it is. To be honest, I was expecting it to be harder because I've got a pair of Yeezy foam runners, and they don't feel very foamy, whereas these Crocs feel very kind of soft and comfortable to wear. The foam runners really rubbed my the back of my feet. To be honest, I can't actually wear them, but yeah, these are great. But yeah, I think that's the only thing of any kind of interest that I've bought over the whole summer. Um, yeah, I think that's the only thing. I'm staring here at like I've got a. I was in Paris earlier in the year, and there was just randomly at Gallery Peritin there was like a Mister exhibit there, and I picked up a poster from there, which I think is like a I don't think it's like a limited edition thing, but it was just like a specific thing that he did for Gallery Peritin. But that looks pretty cool. But
Nice.
yeah, that's it.
You've been sensible this summer then,
I
unlike some
have.
of
I've been
us.
frugal. I've been very frugal.
Best way to be. I'm intrigued to see what Rafa will come back with from his travels
Oh, yeah,
in the next couple of weeks.
surely something.
Yeah, let's hope so. I'm sure he's got something, but yeah, we'll see. All right, cool. That was all of my stuff. Anything else from your side?
Nothing else from my side, no. But thanks for having me. It was fun doing this
Uh,
finally.
Absolute pleasure, and we'll get you back again at some point. Maybe when we've got Rafa as well, so we can have
Yeah,
a wider conversation about something.
sounds good.
Nice. All right, then, let's wrap things up. You can find the show notes, hopefully, in the decent podcast player that you're using. You can also go to the website, theothers.net, and find all the links and show notes there and be able to stream the podcast and all that stuff. You can find me online at Steve R. Penny. You can find Rafa online at Sneakartel2 now because he's been a naughty boy and he has his new Instagram handle. And James, where can people find yourself online if they want to stalk you or see what you're up to?
Yeah, so probably just on Instagram. So it's at SuperJDoug. So that's super, and then the JDoug that I think you see here.
Cool. There'll be a link in the show notes. And over there, they can follow your general life and also get an insight into a lot of the music you're sort of working on and producing for artists as well, which I always sort of find intriguing that you have this little side thing where you're producing these fairly popular tracks from what I gather.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's quite a bit of stuff in the works. It kind of trickles out. The output is it's a few kind of tracks a year, but yeah, excited to have some more stuff on the way. Definitely.
Nice. Like I say, links in the show notes. Head over there, check out the music, give James a follow. And yes, we can wrap it up there. We'll be back hopefully in a couple of weeks. So until then, speak to you soon, everyone. Bye bye.
See ya.